Hey there, it's Courtney with RCK Livestock, where we document our journey to self-sustainability through our garden and our livestock. Today I'm going to start the beginning of a new series that goes along with how I feed my chickens. So I've been doing this for about a year now. Super easy, super low maintenance, and no matter how large or small of a scale you want to do it, it's pretty easy to get started in your home too. Now what I'm talking about is having my own mealworm farm. Now here is the bottom drawer of my system that I've got, and today I'm going to walk you through how I sort all of these, how I keep everything clean, and just my process that I go through. So I'm going to go over what the life stages of a mealworm is and the process you're going to go through when you have a mealworm farm. So you can purchase mealworms from multiple places online. I'll look up and see where I got mine from, but you can purchase them as mealworms or you can purchase them as beetles, so mealworms is the larva form, so like the baby, so you have the beetle that lays the egg hatches and turns into the mealworms. The mealworms is what you feed your chickens. If you let your mealworms go past the larva stage, they're going to turn into a pupa, which looks like a little kind of creepy alien, but they're like the little cocoon, and they stay like that for a couple weeks and then they turn into the darkling beetle. And you'll keep the darkling beetles in a separate container. They'll breed, they'll lay eggs, and then you'll have mealworms again. So it's just a process that you go through. Like I said, I've had mine for a year. I still don't have enough to be able to consistently give to my chickens, but part of that is because I let my mealworms go dormant over the winter time. I kept them in our basement that stayed about 40 degrees or so it was pretty chilly for them, but they didn't freeze, and they just kind of go into a dormant state where they don't really move around a lot. They kind of hibernate, and then once the temperature gets back up, they kind of woke back up and they're starting to get ready to pupate again. So that's the life cycle of a mealworm. Now let's talk about what you want to feed it. As far as feeding goes, what I use is wheat bran. That's the most common thing to use. I always see a lot of people on Facebook groups ask about where they find wheat bran in large quantities. You can pick it up at the grocery store, but you're only going to get like a 5-pound bag for probably $5 or $6. But if you go to a grain elevator or a feed store, you're going to be able to find a 50-pound bag. I haven't had to buy any this year, so I don't know how much prices have increased, but I was able to buy a 50-pound bag of wheat bran for about $14 at my local feed store. So like I said, feed store, grain elevator, feed mill, that's where you're going to find your large quantities of wheat bran. Another option that people like to do is oats, like rolled oats. You can find those readily available at grocery stores or feed mills. The part that I'm not a big fan of with that is that when you go to sift the mealworms, the beetles, and so on, all of the oats stay up with the mealworms instead of sifting through the strainers like you would like, and then you have beetles laying eggs on the oats, and it's just kind of a little bit more of a hassle than what I like to deal with, so it's just easier for me to deal with the wheat bran rather than the oats. But if you are able to find wheat bran and you are able to find oats, a lot of people use the oats and then they grind it up a little bit so it's a little bit finer of a texture and then go from there. So you have your bedding / food. So the mealworms are going to be living in the wheat bran as well as eating that wheat bran up. You need some sort of moisture source. I like to use old potatoes or old carrots that we have in the pantry. It's fairly cheap. It's got some nutrition in there for them. You don't want to use really soggy vegetables or fruits. So things like squash, cucumbers, bananas, stuff that has a lot of liquid, but where they can get stuck in there and essentially drown and die. You want something more firm, such as, like I said, potatoes, carrots, parsnips, rutabaga, things like that would work really well for the moisture source. Some people excuse me, Jerry. Some people make their own water gels. I haven't done anything with that, but as far as I know, a simple recipe to do is using agar-agar with water, mixing that together. I don't know the ratios or anything, but mixing that together, that creates your water gel, and you can put those into your mealworm farm as well. All right, now that we've got the introduction of mealworms going, I will let you know what we're gonna do today. So since my mealworms were dormant for most of the winter time, this is gonna be the first time this year that I've really messed with them, cleaned out their habitat, and got everything kind of reset. So when mealworms eat and drink, mealworms also poop. The poop is called frass. It's like a sandy texture. And I have some in this bucket that I sift into. And as you can see, like I said, it's pretty much sand. I like to keep it as a fertilizer for my garden. It's got a 2-2-2 ratio for fertilizer from what the research I've done is. So it's a very balanced fertilizer. I just like to sprinkle it over the top of the soil on my plants. And then as I water, it gradually seeps in. So it's not something that, you know, is all the fertilizer right at once. So now that we've got all that talked about, I'm going to show you the sifting process that I do to get the mealworms cleaned up. So like I said, we're going to be sifting the mealworms. Last year I purchased these sifting pans. I think a lot of people, what their main purpose was is for gold panning, but I bought the 1/8 inch screen and then 1/30 of an inch screen. So what this 1/8 inch screen is going to do, it's going to keep the mealworms on top, and then the wheat bran is going to fall through the bottom, and then the 1/30 of an inch screen is going to keep the wheat bran on top, and it's going to have all the frass, so all that mealworm poop, it's going to fall through into my 5-gallon bucket that I showed you. And then I got this from Space Coast Mealworms is what the brand was called, and it looks like this. This is called a pupa sifter. So if you have mealworms that are turning into pupa and you want, it's time to clean everything, you put your pupa sifter on top of this pan, sift through. Your pupas are going to stay on the top and the mealworms are going to go underneath. But right now I don't have any pupa, or at least many to make note of, to have to worry about. If I see some, I'll pick them out and put them separate. But for now we're just sifting the frass and the substrate out of mealworms. So we've got our drawer. I just use this plastic box and scoop out the mealworms, and I pour it into the pans. And then, so I just stack both pans, and see we've got mealworms staying on the top. These are just old potato skins. We can go ahead and toss those. So now we have mealworms sitting on top in this bottom one. Oh Lord, the chickens are going to be happy. The next one down we have smaller mealworms. So I'm going to go ahead and put these mealworms into this pan. And then I'm going to go ahead and separate these smaller mealworms, so then I have a better determination of my older from my younger mealworms. And you have to kind of, you know, poke at them and get them. They like to hang on to the screen. So there's the first scoop. And then I'm going to go ahead and keep sifting. One thing that I forgot to do is vacuum out the skins. So if you can see all the stuff that's blowing away, I'm just blowing on it, and that's all skin that the mealworms have gone through from molting, but I'm not gonna really worry about that today. I just want to get everything cleaned up. So these are my smaller guys, so I'm going to keep them separate from my bigger ones. Okay. So I've got my big ones, and then I put a little drawer in for the little ones. I'm going to go ahead and put them in the shade so they don't end up cooking, because it is toasty today. Alright, so let's do scoop number 2. And you do want to do the sifting in a well-ventilated area. You don't want to do this inside a house. Or at least if you do, you want to open up a bunch of windows, because the frass is fine enough to get into your lungs and cause some damage potentially there. And I have heard of people developing allergies to the mealworm frass because of that situation. Seeing all that frass went down to the bottom. And mealworms like to be at about 75 degrees Fahrenheit. And I can't remember, I'll have to look up the humidity that they like to be at, because you'll start getting deformities in the fetal stage if they're too dry during the pupa phase. So a lot of people like to keep them in a room with a humidifier. Since I'm not planning on really doing much with these mealworms other than my own personal use, I'm not too worried about it. But if it starts to become a problem, then I will address the situation. And you do not by any means have to buy the sifter setup. I just got it because it was plenty of people have tested it. I knew it was going to work for me. But if you just have like, a couple hundred mealworms or something, then a kitchen colander would work just fine. Just anything that's going to strain. You could buy like screen from Home Depot or something, and that would work. That would be a good option also. And as far as buying the mealworm goes, purchasing from a pet store, 9 times out of 10 isn't going to work. The mealworms have been sprayed with some sort of chemical that prevents them from pupating, since they are an animal food when purchased from a pet store. So it is in your best interest, as far as saving money and time on your farm, to buy from a mealworm breeder rather than the pet store. And you might see on the sides how you can see the dust there. Now that was Vaseline that I put around the edges on the inside and the out. I put that there so then I could keep ants from getting in the farm. I did have an ant problem for a little bit, but I cleaned the farm and put the Vaseline on the inside and the out and haven't had a problem since. The purpose of that is to, if they go to climb up the wall of the drawer, then they're going to get stuck and caught in the Vaseline. And each drawer that I'm doing is a little bit younger than the last, but since I'm sorting them from biggest to smallest, I'm not too worried about the age at this point. Hey Jerry. Oh, and we have pupa. I didn't see a single pupa in that last box. How exciting. Well, let me get these grabbed out and then I'll show you what they look like. So that's what the pupa look like. Uh-oh, that one's going for food. But they don't move. They may kind of wiggle around. They look kind of alien-like. And these pupa are just the cocoon form. They're going to mutate and then they'll turn into beetles. So my plan with these mealworms, this is going to be the second round. So I've raised all of these mealworms that I'm sifting through. I've raised them all from egg to the stage they're at this point. I'm going to go ahead and let all of these mealworms pupate. Of course, I give my chickens a snack every once in a while, but I'm gonna let all these mealworms pupate, turn into beetles, and breed again. And then at that point, I'll go ahead and start working on being able to give my chickens a snack every once in a while, more than just a couple here and there. But I would like this to be a regular source of protein for them. This is my smallest drawer. Well, I have two other little ones, but this one is definitely my smallest of, you know, like active mealworms. And as you can see, you really can't see much of the mealworms, but I'm not sure if you'll be able to tell, but you can kind of see how the wheat bran is kind of shifting down. And that just shows you that there's movement in there. There is live mealworms. I'm probably not gonna sift through this one just because they've still got a lot of bedding to work through, and there's really not much frass. So I'll go ahead and I'll just pick out all the dried up potato skins that are in here, and then give them some fresh moisture, and that's where we'll leave this one at. So we are almost done. The next step is to take one of our now empty drawers. We're gonna go ahead and put the substrate in. And substrate meaning the wheat bran. You can call it substrate, bedding, food, whatever. So this wheat bran has already been rid of any previous bugs. So just like in your flour, how you can worry about weevils and grain mites, same situation. So what I've done to prepare my substrate is to bake it at about 200 degrees for, I think it's about half an hour or so. You can do that, or you can put the bag of wheat bran into the freezer, and that will also kill any pests that are in there. So we've got the substrate in. I've only got about 2 inches or so of the substrate in there. And I will go ahead and put the larger mealworms in there. Before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and pick through. So this is the larger mealworms that we sifted through. I'm going to go ahead and pick through the pupa. And I'll show you what we do with those in another video, what our next step is. But you want to separate the pupa from the mealworms because the mealworms are cannibalistic and they will eat the pupa if you get behind on giving your moisture source. See, like this one. This one didn't make it, it's dead. Which any dead mealworms or anything, I just throw to the chickens and they're happy to take care of that for me. There wasn't enough pupa for me to have to, you know, be concerned about getting my pupa sifter out and going through that extra step. I'll just go ahead and hand pick these ones. And I'm not sure how these ones will form when they're beetles, if they're gonna have any deformities or anything like that, since they were in like a hibernation state not too long ago. I don't know how that's going to affect it. It'll be interesting to find out and see if it's something that I'll need to change for next year. And moving forward, I probably won't be able to do any more mealworm videos outside because it is toasty out. So I'll probably have to do the rest of the series in the cabin, which is fine. Okay, we will call that good. Okay, so now we're going to pour the mealworms over the top of the substrate. Oops. Okay, we've got those in there. And I could have weighed them to see how many. I can't remember the exact number, but there is a weight per 100 mealworms approximately, so you can kind of get an idea of how many mealworms you're working with. But I'm not planning on selling these or doing anything other than just keeping them for my personal farm, so I'm not too worried about it. So we've got mealworms in, we've got the bedding, now we need the moisture. I'm gonna go ahead and just use carrots. I literally just throw the carrots in. I'll probably break them in half, you know, throw a few. We'll do that. And that's literally all you have to do, and they're good to go. As far as maintenance goes, I do this about once a month. I put the carrots in weekly, check to see how the pupa are doing, and yeah, that's about it. Alright everyone, and that is my mealworm farm setup and how I sift through the mealworms. We've got them in the cabin. It was getting way too hot out there for them. I've got those big mealworms up at the top, the smaller ones at the bottom, or in the middle. And then down here at the bottom we've got our pupa, and I will show you in another video once I get more pupa going and how I can walk you through the process of the pupa and what I do with them, how I care for them. So I will link the products I use down below, but at the end of the day, all you need is mealworms, a form of substrate like the wheat bran, and a form of moisture like the carrots, and then of course a little container to put them in. Even a box or, you know, something small. It doesn't have to be big or fancy or anything like that. This is what I had to start with, and this is what I think I'll continue using. I like to find these on Facebook Marketplace. Super cheap, you can find them for like $5–10, but even if you have to buy them new, I think they're like $25 or so. But yeah, so thank you so much for sticking around. Thanks for subscribing, liking, and clicking the notification bell, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.